Hi everyone. Hola a todos. Welcome to this webinar, Your Cooperative Identity, Marketing and Web Skills for Worker Co-ops. Bienvenidos a este seminario web, su entidad cooperativa, mercadeo y herramientas del web para las cooperativas de trabajadores. We'll begin in a few moments. We're just letting everyone in. Vamos a empezar pronto, nomás estamos dejándoles entrar. Y voy a pasar del micrófono a los intérpretes cuando todos estén presentes. We're just admitting the last few people, and then I'll pass the microphone to our interpreters once everyone is here. All right. Once again, if you're just joining, welcome. This is the webinar on your cooperative identity, marketing, and web skills for worker co-ops. Bienvenidos si están recién juntando a este webinario. Esto es su identidad cooperativa, mercadeo y herramientas del web para las cooperativas de trabajadores. I'm going to pass the microphone to our interpretation team. Voy a pasar del micrófono a nuestro equipo de intérpretes. Gracias por venir. Thank you for coming.
Okay, so ready to get started? Great, thanks, Maureen. So hi everyone, I'm going to get started giving the instructions in English and then I'll repeat them in Spanish. Así que hola y bienvenidos a todos. Voy a comenzar dando las instrucciones en inglés y luego las voy a repasar en español también. So hi, I'm Diego Ponce. I'm here today with my colleague Olga Sosa. We're here on behalf of the Community Language Cooperative, the CLC, and thank you for inviting us to your meeting, where the organizers of the meeting made a commitment towards language justice. What this means is that we're here to try to help create this space so people can participate and engage in the language of their heart, just simply the language they each feel most comfortable in. We are going to use this function of Zoom called simultaneous interpretation in order to help create the space in English and in Spanish so that people can participate and engage, once again, in the language of their heart. Once I finish saying the statement in English, I'll repeat it in Spanish. Then after I say the instructions in Spanish, we start the interpretation. Once interpretation is started, you're going to be able to see that globe icon that says interpretation there in the bottom right-hand corner of your computer screen. I'll ask you to please select that globe icon and to please select your preferred language. And if you happen to be joining the meeting on your cell phone or your tablet today, you're going to instead be looking for the more button or the three dots button so that you can select your preferred language this other way. So if you're not fully bilingual, we strongly encourage people to select the preferred language so you can utilize the interpretation in case anyone were to speak in the opposite language channel and you would like to know what they are saying. If you are bilingual, however, then you can just feel free to listen to everyone in the original language. You don't have to select any language channel if you don't want to do so. You don't ever have to hear our voices as the interpreters. Once you do decide to select a language channel, you can always select mute original audio if you would like to do so, to not have to hear both languages at the same time. And as always, just a special reminder, please pay attention to the speed in which you're speaking. Just please make sure you're speaking at a conversational pace like this, and please make sure you don't pick up your reading speed, since Spanish is about 20% longer than English, but please don't feel the need to speak super slowly for us because there's no need. So thank you for that. Buenos días a todos y todas. Mi nombre es Diego Pons. Estoy aquí hoy con mi colega Olga Sosa y estamos aquí de parte de la Cooperativa Comunitaria de la Justicia del Lenguaje, el CLC. Gracias como siempre por invitarnos hoy a su reunión, donde los organizadores de esta reunión se han comprometido hoy a servir la justicia del lenguaje. Lo que eso significa es que queremos crear un espacio para que todos puedan participar e involucrarse en el idioma de su corazón, simplemente el idioma en el que todas las personas se sientan más cómodas. Vamos a continuar hoy utilizando la interpretación simultánea aquí en Zoom para poder crear ese espacio en inglés y en español. Ahora, cuando yo termine de decir esto, se va a activar la interpretación y ya cuando esté activada la interpretación, usted va a poder ver un icono de un globo de la Tierra que dirá interpretación. Allí abajo en la derecha de su pantalla, le vamos a pedir que por favor seleccione ese icono del globo de la Tierra cuando aparezca en su pantalla y que por favor seleccione su idioma preferido. Pero si usted está asistiendo hoy a la reunión en su celular o en su tableta, por favor busque la opción que dice More, que quiere decir más, o posiblemente el botón de 3 puntos para que pueda seleccionar su idioma preferido de esa otra manera en su dispositivo. Si usted no es completamente bilingüe, le vamos a aconsejar a que seleccione su idioma preferido para que pueda utilizar la interpretación cuando alguien esté hablando en el otro idioma. Si usted sí es bilingüe, se puede sentir libre de escuchar a todos hoy en su idioma original Y como siempre, cuando usted seleccione su idioma, si desea hacerlo, puede hacer clic en silenciar el audio original para escuchar ambos idiomas al mismo tiempo. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Diego. John Michael, can you let us know when the interpretation is active via the chat? Thank you, Diego.
Yes, give me just one moment.
Estamos nomás esperando que se active la interpretación y vamos a empezar. Yo también voy a elegir un idioma para que pueda grabar esta sesión y compartirlo. We're just waiting for the interpretation to be activated. I'm going to select English so that I can record this session in order to share it. And then we'll begin. Thank you everyone for joining this session on marketing your cooperative identity. Gracias a todos por haber inscrito a esta sesión de su identidad cooperativa, cómo hacer del mercadeo de su cooperativa y su identidad a través de los servicios que provee DotCoop y Small World. Once we set up interpretation, we'll be reviewing the opportunities for marketing your cooperative identity via the services of our facilitators today, DotCoop and Small World. Interpretation is now active. La interpretación ya está activa. So welcome again. My name is Maureen. I work at the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. We're the only national grassroots membership organization for worker cooperatives in the U.S. Myself and my colleague Matt Feinstein work in the Co-op Clinic. Some of you attending today may have received technical assistance and training through our network of peer advisors. If you are a member of the Federation, you receive discounts on those services, but any co-op is welcome to reach out to us. We offer technical assistance and training on a variety of issues ranging from governance to finances to the marketing and business needs of your organization. And just to give a brief overview before I pass the mic to our guests today, in the United States, I want you all to know you're part of a huge movement, which includes the Interpretation Co-op that's providing interpretation today. There's an estimated 900 worker co-ops in the United States. We've confirmed around 600 as of our last census. That's over 10,000 workers to date. That's over 370 members in the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops. And we have a broad range of industries and demographics represented in our movement. And as such, a broad range of marketing needs. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass the mic to Tom and Rob, our guests today. I'll introduce them here and then mute myself. This is Tom Ivey, the Community Development Manager at DotCoop, who works with the organization that has sponsored our webinar series for this year. So we want to thank you for your support. We provide webinars on a range of topics, and it would not be possible to meet our standards for language justice if it were not for the support of your organization that allows us to pay interpreters for the work they do. Tom joined DotCoop in 2016. He's consistently expressed that being part of the co-op community gave him a feeling of coming home. He's an enthusiastic advocate for co-ops and can often be seen presenting on digital competency at online and in-person events. I'm glad you're here. DotCoop unites the co-op community through a shared online identity, and I'm going to let you get into that more in the presentation. So I'll introduce Rob. Rob McClinton is CEO of Small World Communications, which supports co-op's digital presence, marketing, and performance through smallworld.coop. He's a founding member of the Cooperative consultancy, the Ajani Group, the Co-op Media Company, Everything Co-op Media, and the Cooperative Business Leaders Community, Zebras Unite. Incredible names. Small World is a team of sales, marketing, and design professionals who have spent decades building startups, growing nonprofits, teaching, and they've partnered with DotCoop for the specific goal of leveraging current market-leading solutions. And I'll let them introduce those topics more fully. I'm going to mute myself and let the webinar begin. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to participate in the chat, and I'll let them introduce any other norms for today's session. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Maureen. Hello, everybody. It's fantastic to be here and to make your acquaintance. Can you all hear me, first of all? Is it sounding okay? Give me a nod if you've got your camera active. We've got a thumbs up there. Fantastic. I've noticed we've got a hand up from one of our partners. Can we help with the question straight off the bat? Please feel free to unmute yourself with your question or pop it in the chat.
My interpretation icon has not loaded. It keeps saying it's still loading. I signed off and signed on again, and it's still loading. So I'm letting you folks know I'm on a Mac and that's not working.
Hi, Bicycle Joe. I'll go ahead and respond to your comment in the chat.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. So yes, hello. Hello. So we're all here today to learn about some tips and some tricks and some insight on for worker cooperatives on how to improve marketing and branding, and to discuss the cooperative difference and using the cooperative identity tools that we have, and specifically with a focus on the digital space today. So yeah, please introduce yourself in the chat if you've seen me before on one of mine or Rob and I's webinars that we've held this year. Also, you check in with what state or region you're in. It's always good to see in the chat to just test it out first of all and see where we've got people based, which part of the country you're in. And this will help us ask some questions later on as well of the group on the differences in area and particularly cooperative awareness for cooperatives. So yeah, plop that in the chat. Let's keep this nice and interactive. It's good. We feel like we can have a two-way learning streak going here, which is always the most productive. So thank you, Maureen. Yes, as I said, I joined the Cooperative Network about, well, nearly coming up to 8 years ago now. And I've been working to promote cooperatives ever since then, primarily through my role here in DotCoop as an advocate for cooperative identity and branding tools that we manage here at DotCoop. And I'm speaking to you now from the United Kingdom, just west of Oxford. If you've been to the UK, it's currently 90 degrees here, pretty warm. I'm not used to this. We don't have any air conditioning, so apologies if I'm melting. I'm glad this is virtual. Let's put it that way. And I'm a born-again cooperator. Education on the cooperative model and how it works is something that isn't really that extant in the UK. But we do have a couple of success stories that stand out. And my understanding of the cooperative identity has really grown with the experience of taking part in many, many different workshops and programs, looking to leverage it and use it to its best advantage, and suggest ways that we can educate both each other as cooperatives and also importantly the public as well, because that's a key question that comes up time and time again. So that's where I find myself now. Rob, I don't know if you'd like to pop in and say hello. Let us hear your voice briefly before we get into the next stage.
Absolutely. I was just taking a moment to write down that phrase, born again cooperator. That's fantastic. That's definitely one I'm going to be using in the future. And so appreciate everyone attending today. We're looking forward to working with you and talking to you about how to market and grow your cooperative and its presence and in your community and wherever that community may be, whether it's online or local. Because at the end of the day, you have a community that you're serving. You have people who need the thing that you're offering. And the world needs a lot more business models that are based on cooperation instead of competition. So your success in the marketplace is what we, our shared communities and our kids need for the future. So we're happy to answer any questions you have to help your business and your cooperative be as resilient and to thrive as possible.
Fantastic. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, we're definitely here to be a resource for you. And we're also going to look at some case studies here today to really get into what cooperatives out there are doing in the real world and what lessons we can learn from them. So first of all, I'd like to say the case studies that we're going to look at are Fertile Ground Cooperative, Black Star Cooperative, Boston Cleaning Cooperative, the Drivers Cooperative, and the Health Cooperative. So please make yourself known. If you actually belong to one of those cooperatives, then we'd love to get a first-hand insight into your processes. We're going to be looking at it from the outside in. So if you're actually in there, make yourself known in the chat, and we'd love to get your valuable insight from. Oh, fantastic! We've actually got somebody from Fertile Ground Cooperative. Brilliant. That's the first case study. Great.
Tom, if I could interject, if you could go a little bit slower, please.
Certainly. Yeah. So I get so excited about cooperatives, I speed up. So I'll slow things down a bit. But great, we've got Fertile Ground Cooperative here, so we'll have a look at that case study, and it would be great to get your insight as well. And finally, before we go into the next stage, I'd just like to also ask questions of you all to put in the chat. If you came here today to learn something specific, if you have a question, is it about the why of the cooperative identity? Is there something specific about the technical side that you'd like to know? The way that verification works, the tools that are available. Please also let us know, because we'd like to focus on that and make this as valuable for you as possible. So stick that in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get round to it. There will be time for questions at the end if nothing occurs right now. But let's get into the next slide without any further ado. Thank you so much. So branding and impact. So I'd like to start off to talk a little bit more about how branding works, just to get everybody onto the same wavelength and on the same platform. I'm sure all of you are very well versed about how branding works. That's great, Diego. Thank you. And we see this sort of thing in action every day. But I would like to specifically highlight why so many organizations invest extremely heavily in developing a brand, and why this is so pertinent to cooperatives on many different levels. It's not just the face value, but there's also layers of reasoning behind having a firm brand. And to have as a heading, a brand is much more than the logo or the visual identity that we're used to of an organization. It's really about how a business makes someone feel, how it's remembered, what it's associated with, and how it can turn that interactions into loyalty. And that works both for staff and also for outside clients and stakeholders. So this review that you're seeing on the screen here in front of you is a Harvard Business Review. This was done in 2015. Called The New Science of Customer Emotions. And it came to the conclusion that clients that connect with your brand will be twice as economically valuable than those that are just extremely satisfied with a service or a product. And what they're really talking about here is brand advocacy. People that become emotionally invested or connected with the identity or the cultural personality of an organization. This ties with the golden ratio. If you've heard this before, sometimes you might have heard about this, that 80% of your value will come from 20% of an organization's clients. This also works in other ways. 20% of your activity will give you 80% of your results. I'm sure you might have heard of that before. So this is saying that the 20% are much more likely to be brand advocates, and they are the ones that are going to be producing most of the value for your organization. And this is fantastic news for cooperatives. In the cooperative network, our strength is that we naturally have advocates, we naturally create them, advocates for our business model. And once people understand the cooperative difference, then they become emotionally engaged with what we do, which is great for branding. And then, of course, we understand and we all know why advocates are valuable, because they become ambassadors for the organization. They spread the word, they convert others, they become free sources of recommendation. And the language you can hear will often change from an ambassador, from somebody that recommends a service or a good product, to, oh, I love that organization. I love going to visit that place. I love what they do. And that's when you know that there's a store of brand advocacy there. And we hear that a lot, particularly in the work that cooperatives do. I'm sure you've heard it a lot in your own sectors as well. So the skill in harnessing that store of advocate value, it comes from two major things. First of all is how we can understand as cooperatives to create the brand advocates, and two, how we can make it as easy as possible for them to find worker cooperatives and recognize those organizations as belonging to the brand of which they're emotionally connected. So it doesn't start with educating people on the details. As long as cooperative businesses can be clear that they have this distinction, that they're values and principles-based organizations, then they already have a level of authenticity that for-profit businesses often have to work very hard to prove. So how does this apply specifically to worker cooperatives? Well, I've been doing a little bit of investigation and understanding. I work across many different sectors, so it's great to focus on one specifically. And what's important is worker cooperatives are a very powerful type of cooperative business, as the people working in the business are the owners generally. So by nature, this is a very democratic organization. It's set up often directly to address problems, very mission-based or mission-orientated, and to create quality labor and to often to serve a community. And we'll see some of that in our case studies coming up. As Maureen pointed out a little bit earlier on, we've got between 900 and a few more, maybe 1,100 worker cooperatives in the US. This isn't an insignificant number by all means. As a sector, there is a definite opportunity to increase collective bargaining power here as a group through a strong brand and increase market share, which Rob will talk a little bit more about as well. If we consider the power and the awareness of the work done by, say, US electric co-ops, many people I know in the US are familiar with that. People understand the history often and what the electric co-ops did to create positive change. From the data at electric.coop, there is about 900 US electric power cooperatives in the US. So very similar numbers to the amount of worker cooperatives there. So that just shows the opportunity that we have. And it's a very cooperative technique to use a collective to create a unified voice and thereby increase the awareness of the group. Sharing its work, its positive impact, all of those sort of things as well. We've all seen the picture of the shark eating the little fish, and then the many little fish gathering together into a giant shark-shaped shoal to come back in and eat the shark. I think you've probably seen that. I should have had that on the slides, actually. But that is working on a level to increase bargaining power when it comes to legislation and other political considerations. Having a cohesive identity works in this way for worker co-ops particularly, not just impacting the bottom line, but on a collective engagement that's available at the sectoral level. And organizations need to be visible to be counted part of that group. So that's a little bit of work just to lay the foundations of brand value. So let's move on and see how the identity tools can do this. So if we move to the next slide, please. So this is the foundation, the starting point that we have available to build on. So we're going to show a few examples here of how cooperatives are contributing to and benefiting from the shared identity of the ecosystem. Please don't feel overwhelmed while looking at some of these. Some of them are quite comprehensive, and it can be, I've had some feedback that it can be a bit intimidating sometimes to consider these big changes. But even the smallest changes make a difference, and we will go back into that a little bit later on. So Fertile Ground Cooperative here, this is a community waste management organization. They're based in Oklahoma, and we have someone on the call here today. You can see here from the domain name that they have chosen, fertilegroundok.coop, that even if you know nothing else about this organization, then just from the Google search result, you'll see this, the one behind the website is a cooperative just from its domain name and where they are based. And this is very effective when it's matched with a strong brand here. They've got a great logo that I really like the logo design in the bottom left. What this does is it gives people a lot of incidental information. This is crucial when improving engagement with the outside world. You need to give people as much information as possible in the shortest possible time. Many of you will be familiar with the marketing funnel. Step one of that, the widest point of the funnel, is awareness. This is for both B2B and B2C business. The gathering information stage is the biggest. We want as many people to follow from the awareness to the next step down in the funnel, which is learning about what your business does. And so the important hook at this point in the search engine, you have a few seconds to grab attention and this is all about improving and gaining your market share. And Rob, I know that your work is often centered around cooperatives can improve market share, correct? I wonder if this is a good time to also talk about everything.coop as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so first of all, I do want to say on the logo for Fertile Ground, like this is beautiful, like very well done, just communicating really what your organization does visually, even without the text. Your designer did a fantastic job on that. So that was effort and money well spent. So when it comes to, market share, you look for different opportunities wherever they can be found. One of them, for example, is everything.coop. So there's the radio program out of I'll slow down, out of Washington D.C., hosted by Vernon Oakes. It's called Everything Co-op. He's been doing it. It'll be 10 years this October. Yeah, and he's interviewed some great names within and around the cooperative community. And this year we're trying something new. In our 10th year, we're going to be putting out a holiday list. So kind of like Vernon's version of Oprah's favorite things, only it's Vernon's favorite things, and all of his favorite things are cooperative related. So cooperative products and services, and people can submit their favorite products or services to the list. It's at everything dot paperform, paperform.co, and then you can submit your favorite cooperative product or service there. We'll compile them to a list, and he'll review them, and then we'll put out this list at the end of in late October. All of that is around bringing attention to different products and services within the cooperative community. And while I certainly want you to do this with Everything Co-op, there's no reason why you couldn't do this within your own community for the cooperatives that are within your area. So if you're in a very cooperative dense community, like in the Bay Area or something like that, you could do one that's very tight and very small distance wise. And if you're in an area where you don't find a lot of them very immediately around you, then go wider, right? Like there's no reason why you can't do the one for your state or for the Southwest or something like that. It's all about taking the initiative to bring the attention. And one way that Everything Co-op is choosing to do it is by highlighting other cooperatives. So leaning into Principle 6 of giving everyone exposure for everyone's shared benefit, including Everything Co-ops. And I think that every cooperative here could do that within their own region or their community, and that would be a great way of serving people who are looking for alternatives or looking for products that they want to and services they want to use, and then helping everyone gain exposure.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. It's wonderful to see that growing, Rob, and yeah, and particularly seeing the impact as well. I noticed you can check out the website everything.coop, and it's got some really great stuff coming up as well. I saw Vernon talking about it on the news channel as well. I see that we have Ophelia, if I've pronounced that right, from Fertile Ground Cooperative. I don't want to put you on the spot if you're not comfortable talking on the camera, but it would be wonderful maybe if you type it into the chat as well. If you know the process of what Fertile Ground Cooperative did to go through in creating the website and developing this and choosing the domain name as well, your insight would be very valuable. That would be great, because you've got a really good cohesive thing there, and it's good to have you on the call. So thank you.
Hi.
Hello. Nice to see you.
So good to see you. This is I'm pretty new to Fertile Ground, but I wasn't there when they picked the domain name and stuff. But I did redesign their website. So if you have any questions on that, be happy to answer them.
Great. Yeah. So I mean, in terms of the sort of visual balancing of your cooperative nature together with the actual business that you are involved with, was there any did you have a strategy in mind for how that was going to balance How much did you want to promote your cooperative nature and take up website space for that?
The cooperative nature. I'm sorry. I think I might be the wrong person to ask that. Put me on the spot, sir.
That's okay,
But
no problem.
yeah.
Sure.
I did interviews with current members or people who use our services to see what they wanted to see in our website, because previously the website was kind of it had really just basic things on there, and it didn't have a lot of imagery and stuff. So I did interviews with people to kind of figure out what they wanted to see more of.
Oh, fantastic. No, that's a great strategy. So you got direct feedback that helped you actually shape your visual identity.
Yeah,
That's interesting. I've not heard of that that done before
yeah.
in some of the different areas. So wonderful that you're getting that direct feedback and using that to shape your strategy. So wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, let's go on to the next case study that we have here, Black Star Cooperative. So these are a very interesting example of how to do a digital identity and how to also synchronize your business platform into it. And this is the cooperative called Black Star. I love what this organization has done because they are a brew pub collective, which has seamlessly connected a number of different facets of their web presence into this one page. They use their website as an ordering point online, so it automatically needs a couple of things. It needs to look good, it needs to be reliable, and it needs that signature of legitimacy as well. If people are going to be putting financial and personal details into a website, it has to feel legitimate. And they manage this through a combination of a really strong visual brand around their name with this really, I love the stylized and unique logo that they've got. And it's connected with a very simple .coop domain name here, blackstar.coop. A shorter domain name is more easily remembered. That's not to say you can't have a larger one, but if you're wanting to stick in people's brains, if you want people to be able to type it in quickly and easily, then a short one is very useful like that. And what's really interesting about this collective is that they've really led with their USP. The reason why you're going to choose them is the fact that they're owned by the community, operating for the community. And the cooperation, the business model that they set up, was specifically chosen to realize their vision of having a cooperative brew pub. So that's a really interesting point for me, the fact that they decided and they placed this right on their front page and talk about where they came from as a strategy and why they're such a resource for their community, which is very powerful when it comes to creating that brand advocacy and bringing people into their collective shared vision. It creates the loyalty and it draws people in. And I think this is a great example of how a worker co-op can be actively led and supported by a message of community focus, while also being coupled with that strong digital brand, and all of this working seamlessly alongside the actual product that they're getting out there and selling and what they're actually doing for the community. It's a tough balance to strike. And I definitely think if you're aiming to do something similar like this with your organization, then you can check out organizations like Black Star, because they've got they're balancing a tricky proposition here. Definitely worth checking them out. And if you're thinking of putting a worker cooperative that way. On to the next one. Let's look at Boston Cleaning Cooperative. Thank you so much. So again, this is a worker-focused cooperative. So they combine a number of different factors like Black Star, which I believe contributes to a very strong cooperative identity, while also being primarily exceptionally clear on what their business activity is. So they move the balance a little bit differently in terms of their branding and their culture. And Rob and I and a few others have been talking a lot about this balance and how much you want to position your cooperative identity as a forefront, or how much you want to have it alongside your principal activity. But they've chosen to lead here with what I think is probably one of the strongest domain names possible, bostoncleaning.coop. That works so well because at a glance, even if you know nothing about this organization, you know, one, where they're located, you know, 2, their sector of operations, and they know 3, that the fact that they're a cooperative, and that's all just from their domain name. If you saw this on the business card or on the side of a passing bus, the clarity really helps them to be the first thing you would click on. If you're in Boston, if you're looking for a cleaner, even if you're not sure what a cooperative is, having their nature, their business up front like that is going to make them a very powerful proposition. And I like the fact that they also cover a lot of bases here. They're very upfront, as you can see from the snippet in the middle left there. Their slogan, great service, extraordinary opportunities for every worker, which again is great, not just for attracting those that are looking to have fair work for their contractors, but it's also going to be a powerful tool for attracting staff and people that are looking to actually work within an organization that gives them the best opportunities. So I've done quite a bit of talking now, and this will give me the opportunity to do a bit of learning myself. So I'd love to understand how cooperatives operate in your particular areas, and if everybody could take to the chat, and on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being everybody knows about them and everyone's a member of a cooperative. Please, could you tell me how visible and well understood are cooperatives in your particular area? So include the number and then the region or the state that you're in. I'd love to just get an idea, the spread across the country that we have here. I think this is going to be a good learning opportunity to see how it changes. And we'll see if they come in there. For example, I think in the UK, I'd probably put a number 3 and then UK. Some people, there is maybe a 4. There's some people are members, other people are sort of aware of the visual brand, but by and large, the understanding is very limited. So yeah, so stick that in the chat. I'd like to see how that come in. So yeah, 1 is lowest. So 10 would be everybody knows about them. They're all members. 1 is almost nobody knows what they are. And if you speak to the people outside of a cooperative, they go, "What's that? Do you mean what do you mean a cooperative?" So we've got coming in. Yeah, so we've got interesting. There's a higher in Baltimore. We've got a 6 in Baltimore. That's interesting. But usually the numbers are around about what I hear about and what I expect from a lot of different areas. We're working with some Canadian organizations at the moment. They say cooperative awareness from their studies is about 30%. Interesting. There's a level of 2 to 5 in California.
If you
Right,
could slow down just a little bit, please.
Yeah, sure. Again, getting too excited about cooperatives here. So yeah, mainly applied to food co-ops. That tends to be something that we see a lot. People will be unaware of the general nature of cooperatives, but they might be specifically aware of different organizations. And that's again why it's so important to have a cohesive identity across, say, sectoral level, to break things out of a particular avenue that people might be aware of. It's interesting. Yeah. Okay, so that's quite a spread, and it seems like in some areas, particularly maybe the liberal hubs, you've got a higher level of awareness. But very interesting, very interesting. Thank you very much for that. That's good to know. Also gives us a good awareness of our opportunity here. Is there anything you wanted to? Does that surprise you, Rob, about California in particular?
Well, no, I agree with Alicia's analysis there. The food cooperatives, absolutely. One of the gentlemen I work with, he's the founder of one of the grocery cooperatives in the Bay Area. So it really depends on where you're at. Montana. Blake's submission there caught my eye, and I was wondering if that's primarily ag cooperatives in that area, right? Would be my guess. So yeah, there you go. So it really does, because the model, can be applied across pretty much every industry. People become, aware of a cooperative over here, but they don't really think about it over there, right? Like, how many people have an account at a credit union and have no idea that they are already a member of a cooperative, right? Because no one knows the credit union is actually a cooperative. Or even though they see member and I get the vote, even though they see all of these things, but they don't pull it all together. And even in the liberal hubs, and like I live in a liberal hub, happily. But some parts of the country don't see that as a great place to be. They might have one feeling about a worker cooperative over here, while ironically being a member of an ag cooperative over there. Same thing, right? It's just in the different context. They see it in a different way, which is funny, because in a lot of ways, certainly here in the U.S., everyone really puts a lot more emphasis on business owners. Like, being a business owner puts you in a completely different category that everyone wants to support, which is great, because that's, builds opportunity and jobs, but it puts you into a different category. But folks don't always think about the fact that like Boston Cleaning Collective, yes, it's a worker cooperative, but you could also just as easily say it's an owner cooperative. Like, you could swap out the W for an O and you would still be absolutely correct. But the mindset of some people would shift if you said we're all owners as opposed to we're all worker owners, right? It's the for some people that being the owner is the thing that's most important, which is weird. Everyone's contribution to society should be valued regardless of whether they're an owner or not. But baby steps. So.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So yeah, that was a very, very interesting exercise. Let's go on to the next one. So this is probably one of my favorites, because Drivers Cooperative, they're based in New York. You might have used them. I think we've seen, there's some people here that are from New York, so you might have used these guys. And they're a platform cooperative that are relatively new, and they've talk about setting yourself up for a challenge, because they're taking on the giants, such as Uber and established taxi firms in the city. This is classic red ocean marketing. They're just going in there trying to change the paradigm. And I think it's fantastic, because over the last 8 years, I heard so many people talking about this as a solution to the erosion of worker rights that we often saw in particularly vulnerable sectors. So to do this, they've done a really interesting setup. They've very much led with their cooperative nature. That is their big difference in how they're setting themselves apart from their cooperatives. But they're doing something interesting in the fact that they're both pitching themselves to the established worker base in the city by offering better conditions through the worker-owner model, and then also using that same benefit to then pitch that to their users, who are the end users of the product and are looking to work to get their product from a more competitive and better place. So this is a multi-pronged approach that I think is available particularly to worker cooperatives, a particular strength of this setup. They're growing fast, and it's all based on a seamless digital platform that's combined with a strong website. They keep it very clear, just like Boston Cleaning. They've got the drivers.coop website there. That's a domain that tells people whether you're a driver yourself or if you're looking for a driver. There's no doubt that's who you're going to click on, isn't it? And at its heart, this way makes the best use of the branding. And this is a topic that isn't often discussed, and that's that good branding is a core of something that motivates employees and improves company culture. It's not just a way of improving your impact in, say, a client base or a customer base, but if a brand is memorable for those people that are interacting with it, then it becomes the foundations of quality work for those that want to be part of something positive. And really, the brand and the culture is really where the people start, and that's such a beneficial USP to shout about as a worker cooperative, and to have people as your staff as the original advocates for the business. this is going to have a lot of knock-on benefits, lowering turnover and increasing your pool of recommendation. And I think Drivers Cooperative are doing it in a really, really great way. Did you work with these guys, Rob? I can't remember. Did you,
I
did you do
didn't. I
this
wish I,
site?
yeah, I wish I had. I certainly, I love everything
Yeah.
that they've done. I also love that they just grabbed the name drivers.coop,
Yeah.
right? Like so many, and I understand where it's coming from because of the generous and giving nature of folks who are early to the cooperative community. You don't want to like make a land grab for a big name, you know, like in like a lot. I think a lot of people would instinctually do, let's do Drivers New York, right? Because we're not everywhere. And they didn't do that. They said, no, we're just going to do drivers.coop, right? I mean, and by doing so, they've got this great domain name that's easy to remember. You don't have to put any modifiers on it. And yes, if you do a drivers cooperative in Chicago, you cannot use drivers.coop. So you have to come up with something different. Or maybe lean into principle, working together, right? And your driver cooperative is a part of drivers co-op just in Chicago. Like there are ways that, oh, sorry, I'll slow down.
Pardon me, Rob. The Spanish interpretation seems to have dropped off.
Okay.
Are we going to give them a minute for them to join back in? Oh dear.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm a classic English person, and I rely on English, so I'm afraid I can't.
Yeah, I also took French in high school, so that's really not going to help, even if I could remember.
Yeah. I've got some very bad high school German that I think would be more offensive than positive. So I'll definitely stick away from that. But it seems like we've got interpretation back. So are we okay to proceed, guys?
Well, she's almost there. She just needs to be added as an interpreter.
Okay, okay.
I believe Diego said to go ahead and proceed. So
Okay.
I'll go ahead and set up Jorge's interpreter.
Getting a domain name sometimes seems quite difficult for someone who maybe wanted to know. So we are happy to. Do you want to address that now, Tom, or do you want to keep going? Or how do you want to?
I think we've got one more case study, and then we'll go straight into this topic about the domain market. I think so. That's a really great point.
Okay, Michaela, we'll come back.
We'll definitely address that because it's important. So we're doing well for time, but we've got one more case study. Shall we go to the health.coop? Next slide, please. Great. So again, these guys, this is a fully synchronized example. So they've done an actual rebrand. Again, this is not to say that everyone has the option to do this, to do a full name change and pay for a complete overhaul. Far from it. It's just not possible for many, particularly established organizations as well. However, this has got some really great evidence behind the power of using clear messaging in your business activity. The health co-op used to be International Health Cooperative Organization. They're still under that title officially, but they rebranded to make a cohesive message across their structure using the mark. That's the COOP there under health. That is the ICA Global Cooperative mark. They're using that as a visual tag. And they became unofficially the Health Co-op and linked to their very powerful domain name, as we'll talk about. They've gone straight for the jugular. They've gone for health.coop. So this all seamlessly connects into a great digital and visual package. Studies have shown that a digital competency is extremely economically valuable in the modern world. A study by VeriSign said that 84% of US customers believe a business with a good website is more credible than one that has a simple social media presence or something similar. So you can really see how that's a core for at least developing that initial trust. I spoke to the director of Health Cooperative, Jose Perez, earlier this year, and when I spoke to him about the rebrand, they said that they've seen a big quantifiable uptrend in the number of phone inquiries that the cooperative has received since the rebrand. Plus, their Google Analytics for their website has also increased markedly since they made the jump over to the Health Co-op. So it seems that they are starting at that top level of the marketing funnel. They're managing to make a lot more people move from the top level of awareness down to the next level, which is actually connecting and communicating with their organization to find out about their services. So I thought that was a great example because it actually shows that this sort of thing in action, it actually having measurable results as well. So thank you. Let's move on to the key question here. Next. So the domain name and talking about the place online. So the question that we had before, I think, was round about looking to do a rebrand and finding the cost of domains was just not possible. Was it over 7,000, way out of the budget? That does seem like a lot. So yeah, I mean, in terms of domain names and online at the moment, this is a place where content is really cheap and fast to produce, and new domain names and websites are being launched all the time. It's increasing at speed. I did some AI training this year, and if we think content production is fast now, we wait until that really kicks off. It's going to be unbelievable the scale that new content and new sort of marketing noise is going to be going out there. So this is where having the cooperative domain namespace that's reserved just for a particular business model is an incredible asset because there's all this choice out there that's still available. And I think we also don't have a powerful reseller market. Is that right, Rob? I remember you being very surprised at the start of this year at the options that were still available.
Yeah, and I remain so. There's not a huge reseller market in it. So, which is both, for the sake of the marketplace itself, and by that I mean the TLD and the health of the TLD. Having a healthy resale market would be good to have. I'll say it so Tom doesn't have to. But it also means that something like fishing.coop, which I haven't checked in this moment to see if it's still there, it was when the slide was created, is still available, right? Even though that there are plenty, I'm sure, of fishing cooperatives somewhere on the face of this planet that have an online presence, right? I think some of it goes back to the general nature of not wanting to take a domain name that feels bigger than your organization may be, or maybe even bigger than your organization aspires to be. But there's so much opportunity for your organization in having that. And the other organization that because ostensibly then you're leaving the domain name for this other entity that you think should exist, that does exist, and will come along and pick it up. They haven't, and they may not. And if they are of that size and nature where a global fishing cooperative name makes sense for them to be the owner of it, then they will either come up with a completely different name that we didn't expect and do just fine, or they'll come to you and say, how about we do this? Right? I give you X amount of dollars for fishing.com and then help you rebrand to a more local or regional brand name and blah, 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 blah. They'll work it out because you're all good, honest business people, right? Within working together, and you'll figure it out. In the meantime, though, you should have fishing.com. Or if you're, have an education cooperative or you're a school, you should have teaching.coop, right? I said fishing.com, fishing.coop. If you are, that local energy.coop is still sitting out there available when there are so many power cooperatives is crazy. And, I will make no comment about worker-owned.coop in this particular webinar. Right. If it is still unregistered by the end of this webinar, I will wonder, like what have we done wrong?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here, both for your existing cooperative or the other thing that you think may serve your community, like worker owned could just be, there are several directories of worker owned cooperatives, of course, but yours could be just for your region. It doesn't have to have the regional name on it. It could just be for your region. Like there's no reason why you can't lead the charge on that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a very good point, Rob. I think it comes down to owning your digital space online, and you can really look to sort of capture. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but you can look at capturing an area, particularly on the digital space, and locking down not only your area of activities, but also your regional area as well. If you're based in a city, you can lock that area down by using a digital identity. And again, this is because the domain name space is protected and verified, which I'll talk about as well in a little bit. Then there's a lot of opportunity here as well. We've got a question from Jenny Murphy. Where can we access .coop domains? So yeah, they're not available on every registrar. There is a list. If you go to the identity.coop website, there is a buy page there, and you can actually find it. If you would prefer to buy a domain name through your current retailer, then just search on the site, see if it comes up. It might well do. There are hundreds and hundreds globally out there that are a great place to find it. So you can have a little bit of a look. But if you want another option, you can always contact me and Rob. We'll talk a bit about that as well later on at the end of the section. So one of the key things about this cohesive digital identity is that many of you will be familiar with the brand process. You have a lot of areas to synchronize your organization's identity across multiple platforms. You'll have a social media, quite likely, in person as well. And there are steps that help an organization define its brand strategy. Many of you will be familiar with the initial processes of conducting market research, starting with data and doing a SWOT analysis to understand your raw material and potential. That is the first step of creating your cohesive brand marketing strategy. You would then move to exploring your brand equity and the value proposition of what it is you intend to do, and then perhaps create some client personas, which would help you to guide you in your service and product provision, to create different people that are going to engage with your organization and understanding how that's going to work, how they're going to go through that. And then the next step is an option only really available to cooperatives, and which is unique in many ways, and that is the option to connect all of this, all of your individual marketing and brand persona, with the collective mission statement and the values of the cooperative ecosystem. And this is a leg up. It's a kickstart, particularly for those that are in a startup or they're just getting going with a smaller organization, by connecting with these wider brand signifiers that we have. By linking them, you're associating your organization with a larger and more successful, long-established businesses in many ways. This is the heart of Principle 6, as Rob mentioned earlier, cooperatives helping cooperatives. The more voices that can join the choir, the greater the sound becomes and the greater the collective identity. And that's something that, particularly in those critical first few years that you have as a startup organization when you're looking to turn initial profit and to become solvent, that is the critical stage where you need every advantage you can get. And this is an option that's available to help those cooperative businesses. And we already know from data that cooperatives are a more resilient form of business in the longer run as well. So that's great. Let's move on to the next slide. I'm just going to check chat here as well, because I saw a few more questions coming in here about places to find domain names. Was there anything else there, Rob, that I didn't see? Okay.
I know someone sent the link to the identity.
Great. Yeah, great. We've got the buy resource there as well. So this just shows a little bit, this graphic shows a little bit of the challenge that we have as organizations looking to break through in a crowded market. You probably saw this grow from the beginning with the bursting of the dot-com bubble, Rob, am I right? Initially, for those of you that don't know that, what that was, it essentially when you had the .com domain name was the only thing there. We had the same problem that other cooperatives are facing with the prices just going through the roof. And so to break that, we've now have thousands of what are called TLDs, or top level domains. You can see a few of them then, there's more coming in now. One of the interesting things is that most of these are not reserved the way the .coop is. They don't have a verification process. And that makes it key for actually managing the authenticity and the quality really of the organizations that are going to be using a verified domain name. And I'll talk about that process because that's probably one of the areas that most people are confused about. We don't tend to see .com or a .country code as branding competition. It's an added asset. And you can see from the list that we have here, if I have a look at some of these domain names at the standard price, some of the ones that we have available, as Rob said, would make a domain name specialist actually start sweating. And if the cost of these, if they were .com, would be staggering, but if they're freely available. So yeah, we've got a huge amount of choice here. So I'd like to go back to the chat now as well and get a bit more insight to see how visible is the COOP as a word, as a distinctive badge meaning cooperative in your region. So again, let's use the numbered system. 1 meaning people don't really recognize that COOP logo as meaning cooperatives. Up to 10, it's widely recognized, or you see it on buildings out there. And please also again put in your region. It'd be interesting to know the spread of how visible this badge is across the country. I'll give you another example from the UK. If I asked this question 5 years ago, I would say it was a 1. But in the last few years, I would actually say it pushed up now to a 4 or a 5. We're starting to see this visual logo being much more visible on buildings. There's been more of a drive for organizations to adopt this as a brand signifier, regardless of which operational sector they're in. So yeah, we've got a 2 down in New Mexico. Yeah, not very well, but some visible. That's interesting. That's interesting. 2 or a 3 in southern Minnesota. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, some work definitely to be done there. But certainly in some areas, I would say it would have been a 1 potentially. So let's move to the next slide. So these are a few of the other main processes that we have available as well. We've talked a lot about the domain name. And oh, that's an interesting point that you have there, Laurie. Yes, so 4, or is that a -4? I'm not sure. Folks often mistype it as a .com and they tell us they can't find our site. Yeah, that is something that is definitely going to that people will run into, I think, with a lot of the TLDs. The hold of .com is very strong, and it's something that's only recently changed. I think as time goes on and wider adoption becomes more available. Certainly in the early years, you had websites that would not even recognize a different domain name apart from .com. That's changed a lot now, and we're starting to see that breaking through as well. And interesting that we have someone saying here that the only visible cooperative here is the electric co-op. That's something I've heard a lot about. Again, that plays back into the sectoral power of some organizations. Are going to be much more visible if they're working for a certain type of sector over others in their particular area. So let's talk about using other things other than using a domain name, because say, for example, you might have already spent a lot of money on a .com. If you come from a more established business, you think we've got a lot of traffic coming into our web domain. We spent a lot of time building up the SEO, which is search engine optimization. And Rob can fill us in a little bit more on that as well. But there are still lots of other options available to organizations to still capture some of this opportunity. And there's loads of things you can do to stake your claim online as an organization, and connect your domain name either to a website, throw up a single one-pager, You can also use it as just a .coop email address. I've seen this in action a lot with organizations that are particularly very well established and have had paid a lot of money for a .com domain name. They will still use the .coop as an email address so that people know when their emails are coming in, it's from a cooperative. And they will also point a .coop to a more established website as well. They can still take advantage of having that verified tag. And there will still be a few other things that you get alongside the domain too, which I will go and talk about in a second. In terms of verification, I would just like to do a quick overview of that, because a lot of people are unaware that there are 4 different sorts of verification categories available to cooperatives. It's not just cooperatives, though that is one of the categories. Cooperative organizations, or those that are in formation, you can still apply for a domain if your organization hasn't started yet, because often the website comes before you've actually gone live and you would like to have everything set up beforehand. You can still apply and still go through the process ahead of time. So if you're thinking about setting one up, don't let the fact that you're not established be something that puts you off. The other categories are associations comprised of cooperatives, an organization that is majority controlled by cooperative, and even an entity principally dedicated to serving the cooperative movement. So even if your business structure is slightly different, because often we sometimes see charities or educational establishments that want to do something directly for cooperatives, they want to serve the movement, but they're not structured like that. They still can go through the verification process and still tap into these identity tools that are available. And that's, I think, a very key point that we can have to make here. So if you do have any questions on verification, please do let me know, because that's something that sometimes people feel might be a difficult process to go through. So that's great. Thanks. Let's move on to the next slide, Maureen. There we go. So there's not just the domain name, as I said before, there is also directory. And this is something that we've been working on to include digital assets, which are going to benefit cooperatives from many different levels, from, as we said, Principle 6, working together as cooperatives. One of the options that we have here that's in progress, and we have many pilot processes coming out in the next few months, is the directory. This is an open source database that updates in real time and shows all current .coop using cooperatives around the world. I recommend you go and check this out at directory.coop, and you can have a play around and see what sort of cooperative organizations are available in your area. We see the functionality of this as not only letting cooperatives see each other visually in the local area to enable Principle 6 and cooperatives working together with other cooperatives, but also to break out into the general public and become more visually aware to each other, so we can attract people into using and increasing that market share that Rob was talking about. So this is something that really will help get the most mileage out of an activity, an area, or a description, and provide that visual organization. Will be the first thing that people will see. And if they're looking for cooperative businesses, then they'll be able to find them on a directory here. As we said, this is open source, and we're looking at bringing in a lot of different organizations and their data sets into this soon. So keep an eye out on this, watch this space. This is something that you're also part of, isn't it, Rob? Improving your market share here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of the Everything Co-op project we talked about before. Whatever we can do to help cooperatives get their name out, get their awareness, so they can be thriving members in the marketplace. It's good for everyone in all of our economies, no matter where we are. It provides that balance that our economy is missing. We're too heavily weighted on on competitive capitalist businesses. We need more cooperative capitalist businesses to balance things out. So.
Absolutely. So we've got a question here from Michaela. Some .com for our business due to some rebranding over time. and the desire to catch typos. That's right. Yeah, to make sure whichever domain name people remember us for is the one that leads to our website regardless. Exactly. This is all about spreading your impact and your digital footprint online. Maybe Rob, you could talk a little bit more about improving your search engine optimization and how that works in terms of web traffic and using domains.
Yeah, so I read through the question, Michaela, and understanding that you've gone through several rebrands, and that's not a cheap or easy endeavor. So I appreciate that, and not knowing what are the other .coop and .com names that you currently have in your portfolio. So understanding that I have no idea about what those things are. What I can say to your question about what should you lead with. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is you want to lead with the shortest, most easily understood name as possible, especially when it comes to your website's URL. So the whole business can be called Curbside Compost Cooperative, could be the whole name. But as we just checked, as I checked on Small World, and as you saw when you checked as well, that compost.coop is available. So I mean, I do that, not knowing what you already have, but you are a Curbside Compost Cooperative, and compost.coop is available. That would be the most direct, easy to understand name for your URL. That I can't think of anything shorter, more on the money. I'm sorry, not curbside.coop, but compost.coop. I can't think of anything shorter, more on the nose for your cooperative than compost.coop. And so I did see, I'm on your website, and my only concern about curbside compost mn.coop is I understand, obviously, that that's for Minnesota, but how you communicate that phonetically when you're telling someone what the name of your where your space is online. Obviously, folks in Minnesota are used to hearing mn together, but it's just as a matter of the number of syllables you're going to use. Right, compost.coop is, done and dusted. It's there, right? So you can see that one is a little bit more descriptive. I really appreciate it. And no worries. I think that you're going to have people coming there for now, but switching up a domain name is not nearly as onerous as it used to be, and compost.coop is just a fantastic name for what you folks are doing. It just doesn't get any better. So you're very welcome for the feedback.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, and great to hear live challenges as well, because these are not what we're talking about here is not easy, and it's not as straightforward as sometimes we can make it set out to be, particularly with cooperative business. I've noticed that there are often resource strapped and manpower strapped as well, as in sort of you don't have a lot of those available to you, to drop the slang. So to go through a process like this can feel very intimidating. You can feel like you don't know where to start with this, but as we've gone through a few of them today, there are some small changes that you can make initially that will have big dividends initially and don't require necessarily a big outlay. And I've often heard that undergoing a rebrand is a challenge. It can be a big one. So not everybody has the appetite for that. Yeah, absolutely. Go through a rebrand despite the large effort. Well, good luck, and we are here as a resource for you if you do go through that. So thank you. So let's move on to the next slide. I think we're approaching time, and I want to leave a bit of opportunity for us to talk about follow-ups and any other questions that have come through for people. So again, Rob, specifically when it comes to talking about just some of the services that you offer, I've noticed that you have a cooperative program available for both new and already existing .coop domain names. If you'd just like to maybe let people know about those services available.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. It's, our focus is around your digital presence. How do we get you to look great online and to engage with folks in the digital economy? Because it is so, just like cooperatives, it's democratized access, right? So in this new space, people have expectations of the businesses and organizations they interact with online. They have expectations of how the websites are going to look, how the website's going to perform. And all of those things, require some level of effort. We stood up a new page just for this webinar this morning. Right now, I've got a developer working on the mobile optimization of that, because you have to do that, right? So if you're on desktop, it's going to look fantastic. On mobile, there's going to be some spacing issues, but he's working on it. But all of those things have to be done, and you have to have someone who's going to focus on that. Well, you don't always have someone as a part of your cooperative or a member of your team who can do that thing for you. And so we are positioning ourselves to be those extra set of hands that you need. So not only can you get the .coop domain names and other domain names if you want. I don't know why you would, because it costs better, but I'll say it so Tom won't have to. We do hosting, but you don't have to host with us. There's some great cooperative web hosting companies, so you can host wherever you want. We also, handle Wix, Weebly, Squarespace sites, Shopify. We can help you with those as well. We've done a fair number of logos and rebranding and social media assets design. So we've done a lot of that in the last year. A lot of people have been polishing up their cooperative and their business, which is great, because you want to make that great first impression. But then we also lean into performance, right? So we have programs where we can do a one-time tune-up of the website to get it running as fast and keep it secure, or we can do an ongoing thing. Well, once a month, we'll come in and do all the checks, check for security, malware, make sure it's running fast. And then some of our newer services are around content, because that's everyone wants to put out a newsletter or email, something like that. Not everyone needs your newsletter. So I know that I sell the service and I should be telling everyone to get a newsletter, but I'm also a consumer, and I don't need my dry cleaner's newsletter. I'm not sure what my dry cleaner would say on so many, like every week or every month, that I would need to see the newsletter, but that's okay. We can talk through what those things can be. We've been working on a program to combine the efforts of businesses within a community to produce a single newsletter that serves them all. So we've got a couple of projects that are really built around working together, that we would love to work with some partners on who want to do some of that. So again, digital services, we do a range of them. It's all around making sure that you look good online, that you sound good online, and that you can succeed and thrive online.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. I think there might be another slide after this, which just again it covers off some of the contact details there as well.
There you go.
So just before I go into final sort of carrying on the conversation and then keeping in touch with you all as well, I just wanted to double check if anybody had any specific questions, because we've covered quite a bit of technical ground today. But please do unmute yourself now if you have a question that you'd like to ask us about how the verification process or anything like that also particularly works. But I would also like to thank our contributors as well for coming in. So I'd like to talk a bit more about working together, because there's not just the opportunities for your own branding, but there's also cooperating and collaborating with each other. We here at .coop, we are the custodians of the identity tools, as we've spoken about, but a lot of what we do also focuses on working together to create that cohesive cooperative identity and amplify voices and bring visibility to sectors and networks that up until this point may have been invisible, and haven't had a great deal of resources put into making them very visible. Some of those opportunities to work with us together are around stories.coop. We do a stories program where we feature cooperatives on a weekly basis. If they're using the cooperative identity tools, then we will promote them through our own channels, and we work together through that. So if your organization would like to feature as part of that, then it's part of the service. Please do get in touch, and you can have us featured, and then it'll go out on the our own website and across our social media channels as well. We have some about a 50 or so, 60-person strong network of media ambassadors that also help to amplify cooperative stories online. So you can also get involved with that chain as well in helping to amplify social media out there. And if your organization is looking to host an event, and it can be anything at all that you like, but you don't have the resources, say, to set up your own event page and have something specific going out to promote this, then we also do offer that as a service, again, for organizations that just want to get a .coop domain name for their event. We'll actually help set up a page and stand something up so you've got some traction there and you can generate some excitement around an event. So there's a couple of different things we do here that really help cooperatives with push their messaging out and take it to the next level. So I think, yeah, absolutely. Any of those connections there, check it out and come and talk to me. I'd love to hear from you, in particular in terms of case studies. We're always looking to hear about people's stories, so please let me know about your case studies. And I think if we move on to the next slide, I think that might be end for us. Yeah. So it doesn't look like there are any other questions, but I do really thank everybody for their questions and wish them good luck for what they've been doing so far. And yeah, if anything suddenly occurs to you, 5 minutes event, which always tends to be the case, I always suddenly think of the best question ever about 10 minutes after the webinar finishes. Then do just send me an email, and Rob an email. We'd be happy to be a resource for you guys. It's fantastic to have you all on the call today.
Hey, Tom, if it's,
So
we're going to drop in that link for the Everything Co-op holiday list. If that's all right here, to just find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do drop that in there as well.
Copy and so. One of the things that I have done, and this is both to you, Tom, and to the Federation, and to everyone here in attendance, one of the things that I've done with my marketing partner on this side is we do this thing we call a website and social media hot takes, and we do it through SCORE and the Small Business Administration, where we can do an event and people come in, they submit their website or their social media links, and we don't look at them ahead of time. We open the website live during the meeting, and you get our initial responses, our initial takes, what we like, what we love, what we think could be improved, both from your website and from your social media presence. And then, so everyone gains. Everyone has the opportunity to learn. If that is something that folks would like to see or would be interested in participating in, let me know, and then I'll talk with Tom, and maybe we can set one up and do these cooperative focused ones. Maybe we won't call it hot takes, as it feels a little, a little pointed for the community, but we'll say constructive feedback, or I'll find some type of a softer term to make it a little bit more than that. But we'd be happy. I'd be happy to do it. I love doing those. Preeti, my marketing cohort colleague on this, she loves doing that too. It's just we do come out of it with everyone comes with a better online presence and a stronger presence. It just feels great to do. So let me know.
Yeah. There's also another question that we have here, Rob. Thank you for that. Michaela asks, are there any recommended resources for diving more deeply into search engine optimization and the like for our sites and social media?
Yeah, so Yeah, that's a great question. On the social media side, the hot takes is probably the best way to handle that because Preety is fantastic at giving you gut reactions. On the SEO side, just send me your information or put it in at the smallworld.co/webinar. And what I'll produce is and this is for everyone on the webinar, is I'll provide an SEO report for your website. And so there are two of them. There's a very technical one, and then there's a higher level one. You kind of need both because SEO work is both art and science. And so we will generate those reports for everyone who's registered for this webinar. If you just ask for it, we will do it. And then I'm providing a 30-minute consult for everyone who's registered as well, so that if you want to talk about the report, we can talk through it. We don't have to do the work. We'll send you the PDF for what needs to be addressed, and then you can find someone who can do it. But I would like to talk with folks if they're unfamiliar with the technical side first, so that if you do decide to engage someone else, you can come into that conversation with an understanding of the technical part, so you feel like you can have a really strong conversation, right? You don't feel like you're taking the car to a mechanic for the very first time. You don't know how it works, and so you don't know if you're going to get a good price or not. I want to make sure that you're empowered with some information before you go into a negotiation to get the work done. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Rob. Well, I think we're right on time now for an hour and a half. So I'd like to hand back to the US Worker team, and I'd like to say thank you so much for giving us a platform to speak to everybody today. It's wonderful to get involved in this community, in this sector. So yeah, we really appreciate that. Thank you.